Hey, this is Zach Log the Great, and I am here tonight with Nate.
Hello.
And we are joined for the first time by my friend Travis. Say hello.
Hello.
And we are getting together tonight to talk about the poem Siege of Vienna Raised by John Sobieski by William Wordsworth. So Sobieski raised the siege and Wordsworth wrote the poem because it's a little ending a title with by so and so is a kind of odd move. But um, Travis, since this is your first time joining us, would you like to start us off?
Oh, I guess I can do that. I've read the poem, and I thought that the YouTube video that you shared to give a little historical background was very interesting. Um, I guess if you could clarify for me the title, the what's his name again? John Siege or
John Sobieski. So John Sobieski was a Polish king who led led the Polish forces to that that were part of the imperial that were part of the Holy League that routed the Turkish army and raised the siege.
okay, so that's what I thought. And I assume that the he in the last couple of lines is referring to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. All right. That clears that up. I will leave one of you lead off
So what did you?
there now that I'm clearly in line.
Okay, Nate. Any first thoughts, or shall I go?
First thoughts about the poem itself was that it's kind of funny that it's like, supposed to be singing the praises of Jan Sobieski, but never says his name. Like, except for the title. Then it's like, you remember who we're talking about. It's only been like 12 lines.
Well, one other thing. Oh, Travis, do you have headphones, by the way? Because I can hear a little bit of an echo. I think it's probably coming from you.
I do have headphones. Let me put those on. I forgot.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, while you're doing that, one thing I thought was kind of interesting. If you look at the way the poem is structured, it's actually not even like the way it's built. It's actually not even in praise of Sobieski because the first two lines are, "Oh, for a kindling touch from that pure flame." It's like, I wish I could feel what those people felt when they said this, which is a weird way to structure something like this, if you see what I'm saying.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean,
Uh,
is it? It's that's not really how I took it when I read that. I thought it was like, the kindling flame of courage, in the hearts of these Holy League fighters, the Winged Hussars and Jan Sobieski in particular. Their hearts were kindled by a fervent faith in God and their cause, to defeat these Saracen invaders.
I hadn't considered that because it's for a kindling touch of flame from that which ministered to sacrifice of gratitude, and I was thinking that he was talking about the feelings of the people who said those things, but you could also be talking about what people did that gave them reason for gratitude, which that changes how you read it significantly. So yeah, I would. I like that. That's cool. What was the other? Oh, so yeah, and one other thing. And then I'll step back a minute. But it's kind of funny. I started doing this poetry series on YouTube partly because, like I've said before, the way poetry is taught and talked about today, it's enervated and feminine and all about feelings.
Sissified.
And
The word you're looking for is sissified.
sure, sure, yeah, that covers it. And then and so I try and look for things that push back on that poetry that gives a very different impression, and I think this one does. And the reason I'm bringing this up is, if you'd asked me for a name of a poet an older poet who typifies that sissified poetry, like let's see, Wordsworth, yeah. Kind of a, like you said, sissified romantic poet. And
they do call him a romantic poet for a reason, I suppose.
Well, I mean, it's isn't it? I mean, in when you're talking about literature, in this case, we're talking about like a specific time period and a specific artistic movement, not like a cover with Fabio with his shirt half ripped off and a woman with, but.
I mean, and you think about it, this is like the classic notion of what knights are for. The mounted warrior riding forth on a noble cause. I mean, this is romance literature to the bone. Luckily, most of those bones were Turkish.
Yeah, it's Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I mean, it's true, it is about that, but if I hadn't watched your YouTube video, I would have had absolutely no idea what this poem is about, or that there are knights involved, that there's a siege, that there's a king. Like, there is nothing in this poem that tells me any of that.
Well, I mean, okay, he does definitely assume a certain historical context. But if you have, and the other thing is, if you look at the gap between when this was written and the events he's referring to, it's about the same time difference as from us to the U.S. Civil War. But having said that, I suspect most of the educated classes of England, who would have been kind of Wordsworth, primary audience, would have had at the time a much better historical sense than most Americans today.
Yeah.
And so they hear John Sobieski, they hear Imperial City. They probably can put together what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Do you know why it was called the Imperial City?
Well, it's
the Empire of Austria.
It may have. I'd have to double check this. In fact, I can do that right now. It may have been the capital of the Holy Roman Empire.
No,
capital
Constantinople. Which famous
no, that's
go back to?
No. Constantinople is the capital of the Byzantine Empire, which is entirely.
I'd always conflated those two. So if we're talking about a dwarfed historical sense, I'm starting to feel it a little bit.
Okay, no, yeah. Well, the Holy Roman Empire was a really weird creature, because it's kind of an alliance of several countries that they were the Pope and the King of whichever one was attempting to basically jumpstart the Roman Empire again, was never terribly unified, and in historical terms didn't last that long. And let's see, capital of the Holy Roman Empire, Prague. Let's see, Vienna. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So it had several capitals, and at that point, Vienna was the capital of the Holy Roman Empire. And the other thing, the other significance. Okay, so this is the Siege of Vienna, 1683. This is one of several major historical battles, in which, if it had gone differently, it's quite likely Muslims would have conquered Europe. There's Lepanto is another, or not necessarily conquered all of, but I mean, it would have been serious incursions. Lepanto is another one, which I've recorded G.K. Chesterton's fantastic poem about that. If you haven't read it, I would recommend going to read it. Or you could go watch, my own performance. I recommend that as well. There's Lepanto, and then there's also the Battle of Tours with Charles Martel. Je suis Charles Martel.
That's such a sweet Charlie I can get behind.
Yeah. So, because the idea, the plan of the Turks in this invasion was, if they had taken Vienna, they probably would have been able to sweep down and take Rome itself, which is the home of the Vatican.
Well, they would have blasted Central Europe to pieces. I mean,
yeah,
there kind of was a shortage of major fortified cities going on up. They'd have been able to, burst into Central Europe and just start, swallowing up these other kingdoms.
And so, at the time that he's writing about this, these events took place September 12th, 1683. And we remember in September when the Winged Hussars arrived. Are
you quoting something there?
Oh, that was the third video I sent. Did you guys get to watch those?
I watched the first one.
Okay.
Yeah, I watched the first one.
I wanted to watch this. I wanted to watch the one about from Sabaton, but I never got around to it because I was like, well, I'm at work now. I can't very well sit in the parking lot in a car with my name on the license plate, just rocking out to an awesome metal song.
Okay, so
going inside.
And see, and this is another problem I have with our educational system today. I'd never, how I heard of any of this? A heavy metal song from Sabaton. Never talked about this in school. I went through I was, paying attention in history school and history class in high school, and I went through college and European history. Never heard a word about this. So
when I first encountered this story, and some stories I'm going to reference here momentarily in a little speech I've been thinking of about this.
Okay.
Badassoftheweek.com.
Okay. I've seen a few of those, but yeah. And
so I'd also heard of Sobieski vodka before.
And so there's this song by heavy metal band Sabaton, who really fun stuff, really good band. I highly recommend listening to their music. Called The Winged Hussars, and it tells about this battle, and in particular, one of the most feared cavalry units in the world at the time, which was the Polish Winged Hussars, and how they and the rest of the Imperial League rescued the city of Vienna after they had been subject to siege for 2 months. Like I said, it's God, the mess our educational system is in. It makes me want to physically hurt someone. So it's probably good that no one I can really lay the blame on is within striking distance. Nate, what were you gonna?
All right. So what I was going to say is that, looking at some of these battles and kind of the history of it, and, some of these characters, especially from European history, you get the sense that God really does send the right man at the right time. Like in this case, John Sobieski, and before him, there's, some other ones. And you really don't think how much Western Europe owes to Eastern Europe for being the buffer and the sort of breaking stone for all these, all these Eastern invaders. Like you start off with a guy named Ivel Joe the Cabbage, knocking off Huns and stuff. Yeah. Why do you have this nickname? You're super badass, but your nom de guerre is the Cabbage. But like he was some peasant. Like got tired of the Mongols or the Huns showing up and burning down his house every 5 minutes. So he's like, you know what, boys? So they appealed to the Lord and said, hey guys, will you help us? And they were like, nope. Too busy living in the castle. Ain't got time for y'all peasants. So they said, fine. Hey, Georg, other common Eastern European name, I don't know. Ivan, get your pitchforks. We got to mess up some Huns. And they did. They beat the ever-loving crap out of a detachment of Hunnic cavalry that came by to raid. So the Huns sent some more guys, and they thrashed them. Then they sent some more guys, and they thrashed them. And everybody was like, well, old Cabbage Patch over here, right? He's doing a better job than the Emperor of protecting us. Let's make him Emperor. At which point the Emperor was like, hold up. So he sent an Imperial army to knock out Ivel Joe the Cabbage, and he thrashed him. Walked in and said, I am the Emperor now. And so everybody was like, yeah, swag, let's do it. He went out, fought some more Huns, destroyed them again. Then some people tried to usurp him, so he turned around, pwned those guys, went out, fought more Huns, and another army from Constantinople, I think it was. And finally people were like, okay, Ivel Joe, you're great. But your nephew's a cool guy too, and he hasn't brought us a lifetime of war. But we're going to go with him now. And Ivel Joe said, no, for Christ's sake, and walked off.
I will say one thing.
It's perhaps slightly oversimplified, but hey, that's basically the story.
Referring to the Eastern Roman Empire and how they've saved Europe's butts for a long time.
No, he was a Bulgarian.
I am in general against apologizing for the Crusades. I think between the Christians and the Muslims, the Christians have nothing to apologize for regarding the Crusades. There is one crusade I will apologize for. That's the Fourth Crusade. You sacked Byzantium. Constantinople. They never really recovered. And then the Muslims took them 100 or so years later. Good job, guys. Yeah, great plan.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why you want the army to pass through instead of getting stuck, because you're gonna, be kind of jackasses to them. All right, but then there's two other guys that were contemporaries. There was John Hunyadi, who was another one of these Eastern European guys. He shows up. I think he was Polish actually, but he shows up in this battle where like the king of Poland is getting his crap stomped, is about to die in this minor border skirmish, and then out of nowhere, this mysterious knight in white armor, for Christ's sake, comes riding up out of nowhere, and everybody's like, who the hell is this guy? Wades into the opposing forces and starts killing people like God himself said, all those guys, screw them. All right? And so when the dust settles, there's this dude that nobody knows who he is or whence he came, standing, neck deep in a pile of corpses, like, so, did I do good? And everybody's like, yes, you did. Who the hell are you? John Hunyadi. Sweet, you're part of the King's Guard now. And he trashed Arab invaders his whole life. Like, actually was one of the first people to defeat Turkic military incursions into Eastern Europe and roll them back and actually assault Turkish territory. To the point that there's a crusade organized around him. And they went out and fought and got kind of overextended. The king was like, hey, I'm going to be in command now. Ruined everything. And they almost didn't make it out, but Jan managed to get out of there. At the same time, there was a janissary named Skanderbeg. He was actually an Albanian prince who had been, his father had surrendered to the Turks, sent him as a hostage. He was indoctrinated and trained as a janissary, fought for the Turks for 20 years. Then one day was like, you know what? You know what? I'm tired of this crap. And so he, in the middle of a battle against John Hunyadi, actually, he rounded up all of his buddies from his janissary unit and said, hey guys, I own a town. It's like, I own a city. Let's go there instead. And so they all just whoop, slipped out and ran. And for the next 20, 28 years, this one city was the entirety of Albania that was non-Turkish, and they crushed, Turkish armies forever. Eventually, as an old man, Skanderbeg he was out raising forces to fight off yet another Turkish siege. When he got sick, died. One of his sons founded a dynasty in a neighboring kingdom, and eventually Albania was taken, but it cost the Turks so much blood and treasure that it allowed the rest of Eastern Europe to build up and fortify. And then, of course, you end up coming down to John Sobieski and his, epic charge. All right, it is God's hand on a man's back when at the perfect time against the most necessary enemy, he takes a history-defining action, the largest cavalry charge in human history, takes it home and shatters a siege, massive siege. By the way, it's one like, a couple of, just a couple of Turks out there, shooting spitballs. This is full military commitment from what was one of the preeminent empires on earth. All right. Smashes it. Drives them off the field in the 11th hour. All right. What isn't covered in that video you sent is that at the time that the siege was coming home, as the charge was going home, was landing, the Turks were in the process of storming and capturing the final strong point of Vienna's defenses. And chances are very good that if the charge hadn't happened when it did, they would have fully captured the city and then withdrew their troops into the fortifications they had just captured, told the Holy League to piss off. And they probably wouldn't have been able to take it. So, seriously, the last possible moment for victory. And then, John Sobieski charges so hard, he knocks an empire into reverse. This is kind of the watershed moment, right? This is like the D-Day invasion as applies to the Turkish army, because that second fortification of Vienna, that second strong point, was as far as they ever made it into Europe. That is the high water mark. Their deepest penetration in European territory was that. And after that, it was a slow decline. So you could say that, they're building, and then here comes John Sobieski with a flying haymaker and just spins them around and sends them marching toward the dustbin of history. Again, it took 2 more centuries for them to fully go away, but after that, their power waned rather than waxed.
I think that covers a lot of territory. Travis?
Well, I was curious. I forget the name of the White Knight that you mentioned, but do you know his story beyond the day that he showed up and just kind of killed everyone? And they said, "Oh,
for one thing, his name was the most Eastern European name I've ever seen. It was
how many vowels did he have left?
Oh, he had most of the vowels left. He didn't have a whole lot of consonants, though. It was Georg.
That's not Eastern European. You're not supposed to have any vowels.
It was Georggjj. Georg. Anglicized to George. Or no, maybe that was. No, I'm sorry. Hunyadi was just Jan. So it's Janos Hunyadi. George was Skanderbeg before he became Skanderbeg. But he also actually was probably a peasant. Like, it is likely that he paid for the armor that he was wearing out of his own pocket or made it himself. Sources are conflicted. And rode into battle despite having no formal training and no legal permission to do so. Yeah, despite being not affiliated with any military or militia, was just like, nah, F it, time to fight. And so, like I said, he became a great general and is still, still the one of the national heroes. He's got a beast mode statue. They said his coat of arms was a raven. It was like a white field with a raven holding a ring in its beak. And he said they said that his heraldry was literally made up of things that his parents liked. That's how he picked it. And I was like, yep, no, that's my heraldry. My mom likes ravens. My dad likes rings. Couldn't think of a color.
So,
White.
So Nate, I know you're considering a career change soon. Have you considered, maybe being a history teacher?
I considered that a long time ago. It was actually what I was going to do when I first went to college, but I decided against it because other people's kids.
So what was and one thing I really like about this poem, like I said, the definitely very much the masculine spirit that's missing from what's taught today. And it's like, the cross shall spread, the crescent hath waxed dim, and it's like, can I get one prominent Christian leader talking something like that today, instead of talking about how we're supposed to make friends with people who kind of want to kill most of us and subdue and impose the jizya on the rest of us.
Well, I mean, the crescent will wax dim because John Sobieski knocked them the hell out.
Yeah, well,
but I mean, yeah, this stems from the age of the church militant, which, holy war is generally to be avoided, but sometimes you do gotta fight,
Well,
this is a position I've taken that I kind of stumbled upon one day while I was, asking questions of myself and my beliefs, which anyone out there watching who has never done this, try it. You'll realize things about your life. It may even change it. But I was like, is it really okay? Because Sean, that I am a real lover of my firearms. I figure that, I ain't got time to fight with you. I'm probably just going to shoot you. Don't mess with my family. Don't mess with unoffensive people, right? If nobody's trying to harm you, do no harm. But if they try and harm you, wipe them off the planet. Cool. And I was like, is that really okay? Like, what about the whole turn the other cheek thing? And then I realized something. Said Jesus himself says to buy a sword. Yeah, and if you have no sword, sell your cloak and buy a sword. There will be those out there who will try and murder you for your faith. And obviously, you're not supposed to let that happen. The sword is there to fight. Now, people are like, well, what about live by the sword, die by the sword? The context of that is a sword raised against lawful authority. Okay? You're not supposed to just be fighting people because you disagree with them. You fight to defend, you fight to defend what is right, defend the innocent. That is acceptable. And so, if the church allows itself to be destroyed without a fight, if the faithful allow themselves to be slaughtered, then the kingdom does not gain from this, right? If God wants to spend our lives, he can, because they are his. But, and so if God says that your death will bring glory to the kingdom and it will advance the cause of faith, where you fall, then okay, it is our Christian duty to go ahead and march into that death. And this is heavy and harsh, and it's kind of like, that doesn't sound like prosperity to me. Well, no. But like I said, if your life is just taken by some clown in an alley somewhere, who has gained from that? What good have you done just to allow yourself to be killed? And so that's why, I'm like, no, I think it's justified, to fight, to defend the faith. We cannot let this be destroyed, and we can't let it be snuffed out.
Do you think, I mean, this particular poem, historical event that we're discussing, do you think it was truly about the faith or religion? I mean, there was that involved, but to me, it seems like it was very much about land and money and acquisition.
Well, okay,
religion,
but
I mean, they each had their individual religion, and it's always a good rallying call. Go ahead.
There's a couple things going on there. I mean, even if the people leading each side were primarily interested in their, personal power and like dominating a particular area of land, if the Turks had conquered this area, it would have become Muslim.
Right. No, like I'm not disputing that. Yes.
Right. And so, well, and the other thing you have to take into account with that is, I mean, and a lot of people try and pretend this away, but like, spread of the faith by conquest is built into the Quran. Like, this is what you're supposed to do. Go out, conquer them, until, go out, strike the infidels until until they feel themselves subdued, pay the jizya and feel themselves subdued. Until they admit that Islam is the true faith, or is what they ought to be serving, pay that tax, and over the long term, what will happen is that area will become, the people of that area will become Muslim because of the relentless pressure that an Islamic society, that an Islamic ruled society will bring to bear on any non-Muslim populations they rule.
And to further answer, to separate the political and religious motivations of the Islamists, or the Muslim leaders and soldiers here, like Sean said, is impossible, because Islam is a military, political, and religious system all fused into one. Christianity is not. Really, Christianity got militarized by its ongoing contact with Islam, because in the end, it was fight or die. We had to kind of say that, okay, look, if we don't do something, then these invaders they're going to conquer everything. And so Christianity began to militarize along the lines of holy war and crusade in an effort to check and eventually repel, these Muslim incursions, this tide of conquest. Like I said, it's 4 centuries between the start of Islamic military expansion and the Crusades. And for all of that time, Christian kingdoms are being overthrown and sacked regularly. The holy sites of Christianity, which, were once in Christian hands, or at least, were accessible to them, were, now under Muslim occupation. North Africa, right, used to be a heavily Christian area. How many Christians are there now? Not many, because, well, the Christians never reconquered it. So, like I said, it's hard. So while the defenders, or rather the Holy League members, would definitely like, hey, we don't want to lose our lands, the men that were fighting were definitely also seeing that, hey, this is also about, we don't want to see our faith, made subject to these infidels.
Well, and that also reminds me, which is another video I have. I recorded an essay by Tom Kratman. Where was secular humanism at Lepanto? And religious faith is, was an enormous part of why, these people were able to come together, and this is another thing which, Lepanto is a great example. I don't know too much about the political situation with this one, but it's probably much the same. These were, several, this was an alliance. This was a group of people, a group of countries working together. And odds are, you look at how things went at the time, they probably didn't like each other too much. They probably, several of them probably had, ongoing disputes with their neighbors. And like the idea that they could join together for this cause, probably, I mean, if it weren't for their common faith, that probably wouldn't have happened. And so it's the idea that you can separate like faith, the idea that you can separate religious faith and culture and like political things is a relatively new one. And
I wouldn't say that I'm trying to separate them. I mean,
okay.
I can see from the way I worded it, like that you could, like, they're so intertwined. And I mean, it's not like Islam is the only religion that conquers. In our own way, Christianity has conquered. I mean, we conquered all of North and South America, all the natives. Imperialism took over Africa. I mean, largely the reason the whole world is Christian is because of conquering. I mean, not that the whole world isn't Christian, but you know what I mean? The part of the world that is Christian, like there's never really been a separation of conquering and religion.
Well, that's true. But that's also largely because, these a-religious times have come after the waves of conquest. Religion would unify people enough that they could build up something, become powerful, and then go out to conquer. Now, did the religion instruct them to? But they brought it with them. Now, the reason that religion has endured in these places is either because the conquerors never left, like I said, in the case of North Africa, they're sort of bred into the population now. Or in the case of a lot of these places where there were other religions unsuppressed, or sometimes when Christianity was actively suppressed, like China, places like that, it still hangs on because there's something to it. So I mean, it's not, Christianity isn't in a lot of these places it's in just because colonizers and whatever went there. I mean, it's there, it is endured there anyway because, like I said, the people see something in it. When really, once they could have gone back to their old ways.
So to go back to the poem,
yeah,
I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little disappointed. As much as you're calling this sort of a manly poem, I'm not seeing the manliness and the blood and guts. I'm not even seeing these winged hussars. I mean, there's so much opportunity from this whole siege and this whole cavalry charge to give me very visual images of power and might. And I get I'm going to say, I get a lot of fanciful talk from him, not a whole lot of description.
Well, I mean, okay, for one thing, this is a sonnet.
By the way.
What was that?
I'm on your side. I'm like, yeah. I mean, I was pretty, I like it because I know what it's talking about. But yeah, like, if you go in kind of a blank slate, you're like, where is the hardcore here? I don't.
Okay, for one thing, this is a sonnet. I mean, that's a very that's 14 lines. Not really ideal for a narrative form.
Which questions? Why did he choose a sonnet, in order to praise this battle? I mean, form informing content.
That's fair enough. And if either of you can find another poem about this event, I would be quite happy to see if I could memorize and perform that one as well.
Maybe you should write one.
Yeah.
That gets the true blood and guts manliness of it.
Well, okay. And like I said, if depending how strict you are with the term poem, there is the song Winged Hussars by Sabaton, which both of you should immediately go and listen to after we close this out, so you can get that.
On a semi-related note, I love the name of the band because Sabaton is like an armored boot, which is like, that's a really good band name.
That is a good name.
It's a metal shoe. I don't know.
Metal band.
But yeah, and that actually reminds me, I'm gonna have to see if I can find any. There has to be something. There have to be poems about the Battle of Tours. There must be, and I'll have to see if I can find that. And because there's
the Battle of what?
Tours.
Tours.
And do I have that? Nate, I think you probably could tell me. Do I have that right?
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking? Okay. I'm probably mispronouncing it, but I
actually think that's right. It's Tours.
But that was the battle where Charles Martel turned back another Islamic incursion into Europe. Because I have Lepanto already. I have Chesterton's Lepanto, which is fantastic. And so I have Lepanto, I have this one, so if I can find that one, that would help. Or about the Reconquista, the Reconquista. That would be good too.
Yeah. That's pretty hardcore.
But let's see. I don't know. I think I've covered most of what I wanted to say about this one. Either of you two? Any other big things you wanted to hit?
No, I think I got to say all I wanted to talk about. I am very satisfied.
No, I'm satisfied as well, and yeah, I've definitely enjoyed, getting some background on this and the added background that you guys have given here this evening. So definitely an interesting time and moment in history.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for getting together with me tonight, and I'm gonna close this off.
Oh, before we close, I have seen you drinking something out of a clear bottle. Is that happen to be the vodka that was mentioned? No. The name of the bunker?
That is not Sobieski vodka. I should have thought of that. And maybe next time, if I can find another poem of the Crusades or Christian defense of Europe, I might do that for the next one. We'll see.
Hopefully in the near future, I'll be able to be, in studio with you and do these. So that'd be nice.
Okay. So
we'll raise a toast.
All right. Then thanks for getting together with me tonight, and God be with you.
All right. Thanks, guys.
With you as well.